welcome to The Link. Good evening. My name is Malcolm Sibe, and there is a high-level inaugural conference on public-private partnerships, which is happening on the 16th of September. We thought we should have a discussion, but also bring it closer to home on how you can, or your company or your organization can participate or get involved in public-private partnerships. And to discuss that with us is Beatrice Flora Ikilai.
Yes.
The name gives me problems. You're from the United Nations Commission for Europe, of Working Party on Public-Private Partnerships. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And we're glad to have you here on The Link.
Thank you.
Great. So first of all, let's first talk about briefly about the conference. We've been preparing this. We really have attended meetings with you in as far as preparing for this conference is concerned. Why is it important and why at this time?
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Like you mentioned, my name is Beatrice Flora Ikilai. I'm a Ugandan. And I am a Vice Chair on the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Bureau of Public-Private Partnerships. I am the first African on the Bureau, and I represent Uganda, but the whole of Africa. But I'm also the co-president of the Africa Public-Private Partnership Network, and I am an Africa representative on the World Association of Public-Private Partnerships. So I have the honor of bringing this conference to Uganda. When I got this appointment last year in 2018, I was given a mandate to promote public-private partnerships in Uganda, but the whole of Africa. Africa has 54 countries. So of the 54 countries, I had the opportunity to start this conference anywhere in Africa. When we developed the program and the strategy, they told me go out to Africa and promote this event or this conference. So Egypt, South Africa, Morocco, Nigeria, they felt they were the best countries to hold this conference. But I said I'm the first African and I'm a Ugandan. So I need to take this conference home for my people to benefit and to get a feel of what actually happens in public-private partnership space. So that's how this conference comes to Uganda. And the basis of the conference is from what the African Development Bank says. African Development Bank says Africa is a good continent with good people, with good natural resources, but we agonize with limited or no infrastructure. Infrastructure gap is between 130 to 170 billion dollars per annum. Available infrastructure is between 68 and 108 billion dollars per annum. So where is the next?
You're basically talking about Africa as being the next frontier for growth, economic growth.
That's
globally.
why the theme is public-private partnerships, Africa's next big thing.
That'll be discussion for another day because the conference is coming up, and I'm sure we'll definitely be having you here to discuss with us more. But since now the conference is coming up, we have decided, like I said at the start, that we need to bring the conversation closer to the business community so they can know how to benefit. So how can this model of public-private partnerships, which we have actually had commonly, is the term being used by government a lot. So how can the model be designed to benefit the private sector that we look at as the engine of growth at the end of the day?
So the model is designed in such a way that government partners with the private sector to deliver infrastructure and services that government would ordinarily provide. For example, roads, for example, power dams, accommodation, water and sanitation. So the government partners with the private sector to deliver these infrastructure services because the private sector has expertise in innovation, has expertise in financing, has expertise in having the right equipment, has expertise in structuring these projects in a nice way, in a business sense way, better than government does. The private sector has expertise in operation and maintenance of this infrastructure. And then also the private sector, when you do a public-private partnerships, the risks are allocated to the party who is best able to manage it. So the party best able to manage a risk like walk to work is government. The party who is best able to manage change in law is government. But the party who is best able to raise financing to put the good equipment for constructing a road is a private party. So you find in the PPP, the risks are allocated to the party who is best able to manage it. So out there, the private sector, the banks, the construction firms, the insurance companies, the pension funds, this is the time. position yourself, to take your space.
And private companies who are not in practicing, you know, finance, it is private companies.
Yeah, private companies, for example, they are construction firms. If you look at Rocco is a big firm, but they're smaller construction firms. If you look at, for example, the microfinance institutions, they might think they're too small, but when they put this money together, they can have a stake to take part in the PPP space. You look at interior designers, for example. If Ministry of Education or Ministry of Finance or any government entity wants to construct office accommodation, they need interior design. They need cleaning services. They need catering services. So all those different private sector players have a role to play in the public-private partnerships.
That's fantastic. And you speak of risk. And risk is critical in this model of business, the public-private partnerships. And when you talk about risk, you trigger the pulse of this guy who has his money. He has invested in, for instance, construction, like you said. He's invested in all these other businesses, supplies, services. They normally think that if this business is a public-private partnership, model, then I'm not likely to get. How can I get a good deal? Okay, those are the sentiments. So how can we ensure that the private sector gets a good deal from this type of model?
So when you do, thank you very much, when you do a public-private partnership, you must do a detailed feasibility study. So when you do that detailed feasibility study, you are able to check the affordability. Is this project affordable to government? Is this project affordable to you and me? Is this project affordable to the private sector? Have you done willingness to pay studies? If they do a road like the Kampala-Jinja Expressway, they have to do a willingness to pay study to say, if we charge this fee, are you willing to pay this fee? But then there is also ability to pay study. You must do the ability to pay study for you to find out if somebody is willing to pay, but is he able actually to pay this fee? Because this informs whether the private sector will bring in his money to your country or the private sector will not bring in the money to the country, because you'll say people are willing to pay or people are not willing to pay. That means if I want a return of 20% or 30% from that investment, I may not be able to get it because people are not willing to pay, or people don't have the ability to pay. So it is important to do a detailed feasibility study. The next is commercial viability. When I talk about commercial viability, what are the revenues coming from that investment that you put there? So as me, as a private sector, I want to know, is that investment commercially viable? What is it there? What return can I get out of that investment? Then the other one is the risks, like I said. Are these risks going to be given to the party who is best able to manage it, or the risks are going to be lopsidedly given to anybody? Work to work, you give to the private party. The private party will not take that risk, but if they are accepted to take that risk, they take it at a premium.
Let's stick with risks. But what are these risks, if you may point out a few? I know it's ringing in very many people's minds. And when you talk of risk, you must expose the risk. So what are these risks that we're talking about?
If I may define risk,
the common risks in this practice.
Risk is a probability of occurrence of an event. So if you find in a PPP, let's take Kampala-Jinja Expressway. When Kampala-Jinja Expressway was done by UNRA, that's Uganda National Roads Authority, they identified about 300 risks. So the risks that are associated with the Kampala-Jinja Expressway is construction risk. When you're going to construct this road, there is construction risk. You might as you do the construction of the road, you might find water on the road, you might find a rock, you might find some other things as you construct the road. So that there's a construction risk, there's a finance risk. Who is going to raise the money for that infrastructure? And then you find the foreign exchange risk, because some of the money is going to be foreign money, some of it is going to be local money. So some people are going to pay the toll using Ugandan shillings. Some may want to pay the toll using foreign exchange, foreign currency. But then the private party who is going to come might be from Europe, he might be from the US, so he will decide on a kind of a currency that he wants to be paid. But the Ugandans are going to pay in shillings. So there is going to be a currency risk in terms of the fee that is going to be paid for the road. The other one is latent defects. Latent defects means that as you construct the infrastructure, there are certain defects that come after the construction of that infrastructure. Maybe the building gets cracked, or there is some falling debris or something. So that risk is a risk that the private sector takes because he's supposed to be an expert in that area. So there are several other risks that if we went through them, we might finish like 1 hour, but those are just high-level risks that are in the PPP space.
Is this a model that has really helped? What countries have been, as we go, have been very, very successful in implementing the public-private partnership models? I know that Uganda, you were discussing with us the other day and said it's one of the benchmarks. They look at Uganda as a country that has really done a good job in certain reforms, in embracing PPPs. How do we rank as we live?
Uganda will rank, if I may, you might rank about number 7 or number 6, around there.
Globally?
Not globally, Africa.
Africa.
Yeah. If you put globally, then we are quite down there.
Sure.
But to give you a flavor, Uganda, we have an enabling environment. When I talk about an enabling environment, we are talking about the policy, legal, regulatory, and institutional framework that is in place. But before that, Kampala Serena Hotel is a PPP, for your information.
Yes.
It's under a brownfield PPP, and if you can attest to me, it's quite a successful infrastructure project. You have Umeme. Many of the Ugandans will not want to hear this, but Umeme is one of the PPP projects. But when you look across Africa, the best country for PPPs is South Africa. It has done quite a bit of projects under a PPP arrangement. If you have been to South Africa, you've traveled on the How Train. The How Train is a PPP project that the government of South Africa thought to...
There are very many on the list. I'm sorry, I'm really cutting you short because we're running out of time. We don't want you to preempt your information that will be presented, or your presentation at the conference. Yes. The inaugural Public-Private Partnerships Conference that will be happening here in Kampala. Will that be at the Kampala Serena Hotel on the 16th to 18th 2019. That's a very big announcement. Thank you very much, Beatrice Flora Ikilai, the Vice Chair, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe.
Bureau of Public-Private Partnerships.
Bureau of Public-Private Partnerships. Some sort of tongue twister. Thank you so much. We'll be welcoming you back here very soon.
Thank you so much.
And that's the link.
Thank you.